Okay, Tim's Turbos here. Just wanted to go over a few different things with the Holset turbochargers. Now, a lot of people email me and call me to figure out what sizes they can match up with what and what actually will work together. So I just wanted to go over a few quick things and show you the different lines. Alright, the HX35 is probably the most popular one, and there are hundreds of different size wheels. So if somebody just says it's an 8 blade, or if it's a 6 blade or a 7 blade, it doesn't matter what the blade count is, it could be any inducer exducer. And pretty much goes with all the other ones too, the HX35s, 40s, H1Cs, and all that stuff. And so the early family of the Holsets that a lot of people are still pulling from the junkyards are the H1Cs and the H1Es. Now, each of these is kind of a prequel to the HX35, which is the H1C, and the HX40, which is the H1E. And so both of those use a common turbine head and shaft as that family, actually. So the H1C is going to run the HX35 shaft, and so you can interchange those turbine housings as long as they're running, the same inducer exducer. Now, if you run into the different sizes for the turbine heads, that gets a little kind of quirky on some of them. I'll start out with the most popular one, HX35. Now, most of the turbine housings that are made for these are going to run in the 70mm inducer, which is the incoming gas part of the blade, and a 60mm exducer, which is the exiting part of the blade. There are different sizes, but this is the most popular one. Now, the HX40, which is also an H1E turbine, it's going to run in the 76mm for the inducer and the 64mm for the exducer. Now, there are some different sizes. Some of the larger ones are going to be a 67mm. It's got a lot of flow on that wheel. And people think that the next size up is the HE351 and the HY35, which it's really not. It's actually the smallest wheel. These are sized up in a lot of the diesel applications where you have like the Dodge 5.9 Cummins and stuff like that. And so this one is actually a 58mm by 65mm. And so HY35, HE351, they all actually use an HX30 turbine head. You can kind of pick it out because you'll always see a very large hub on these for strength. And it's a good wheel, just not a really high flowing wheel for some of the gas applications. And so one misconception we get a lot on the HX35 is the 7 blade is supposed to be the highest flowing one. Well, it's really not. It's a great wheel because the 7 blade is always a nice wheel. It's just the fact that the 7 blade is actually, as far as the ones that a lot of people pull in the junkyard off the Dodge trucks, they're going to be about a 54mm wheel. Still good for about 500 horsepower. Now the 8 blade wheel, they can range anywhere from about 46mm up to about 56. And so the 8 blade is going to be the largest of the HX35s until you start interchanging some of the HY35s on them. Now, if you run over to the HX40s, you're going to have basically 58mm to about 60mm. Some of the aftermarket ones go 62, 64, but you don't always see that much flow difference on them. And so you have to actually measure the odd count blades a little differently. I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video. And so these are good for about 64 pounds per minute. And so you can see them flowing anywhere from about 550 to 650 horsepower. And they're really dependent on actual turbine flow. So if you have good turbine flow, they really keep putting out more power. Now the HY35, that's going to have a different frame setup because they're going to run different bearing housings and different parts where they go into the turbine housing. And so you can interchange a lot of these. All these will fit on the same shaft from the H1C, H2E to HX35 and 40, all fit on the same shaft, and they use the same journal bearings and piston rings. The one that's going to be a little different is the superback on a H1C. The superback is the part that pops out that sits on the hub or the thrust collar. And so the superback is about 1.5 mm shorter on the H1C as is going to be the HX35. So if you actually tried to put this wheel on an HX35 bearing housing with the original thrust parts, it'll actually start to scrape the housing, and it's not going to match up unless you do some custom machine work or swap out the thrust parts. And so usually if you're sticking with the H1Es and Cs, you want to stay in that category and don't interchange parts too much, but you can do the turbine wheels. And so next up I'll show you how to measure inducer, exducer on odd blade counts, and we'll go from there.